Keep that chat going. Would love to continue to see some pieces in there. If you can, go ahead and drop how you would finish this sentence. Money is. Go ahead and tell me exactly what you would say money is for you. You can drop those in the chat and respond to each other's perspectives as I introduce myself. As you heard, the fullback of finance, I am Jedediah Collins. I went through the NFL, became a certified financial planner to go and start to empower people. At first, yes, that was in wealth management. For the last decade, it has truly been focused on starting the conversation around money. How can we identify where you begin a plan? I wrote a book, began a company, and today am a very proud advocate of financial literacy. But I am not an advisor, not an agent. I'm never going to ask you for money, truly just wanting to empower you. I love the comments, Steve. A tool, what money is, what you make it. It is possibilities. Lots of opportunity dropping in there. Security, accessible, and money is necessary. You can just see an introduction in how people think about money from that simple open-ended question. Money is. I love a tool. I obviously like to call it a vehicle. Money vehicle is where we get the term and the name of our company. We want you to see money as an action, as a verb. Money is something that is going to take you somewhere. Money is not the final destination. The medium for important. This is what I love about asking that question. So as we frame that, what money is to us today, we want to start really identifying how we see our dollars. And this is going to play into what type of or you are. Are you a spend-or? You see money on a day-to-day time frame. Are you a save-or? You start to look months, perhaps even a year into the future. Or are you becoming an investor, where you are able to look at money through a long-term time horizon? If any of you have heard of the rule of 72, it is a fun little mathematical game. You could use it at a cocktail party here in the near future. You take 72 and divide it by whatever return you think you can achieve. 72 divided by your achievable return. In these scenarios, well, as a spendor, you're not going to get any return because you spent that money. Those dollars are no longer your employees. You have given them to somebody else for them to go and employ. Then we look at a saver, somebody who looks in their checking savings accounts, high yield savings, a CD, a money market, and we start to see that 2.5%. Well, as we look at this, the 2.5% will double the money over a time period of about 30 years. You will go from 50,000 to 100,000. The catch here is, with the world today and this idea of inflation, that 100,000 isn't going to feel what it feels like today. In the future, it is going to feel much closer to that $50,000 mark. Why we all have to shift and start to step into this third, often uncomfortable lane is because we have to start seeing our money as our employee. We have to start making it go to work for us. As you look at 72 divided by 8, you see the impact that it will have, making a 10x exchange over that time period. But the message and quick takeaway as you look at this action in this slide is the reality and the truth. You can no longer save your way to wealth. You have to begin to invest. You have to make those paychecks and those dollars you have your employee and tell it to go to work for you. I love to say money is lazy. If you don't tell it to go to work, it's not going to. As we look at a paycheck, we are going to start to frame around 4 choices. As we break it down, we will introduce a 5th choice. But as you look at right now, think of 100% of your paycheck. I like round numbers. Let's say it's $1,000. Of that $1,000, what percentage do I automatically set towards my future? For now, that's saving and investing. Then how much do I want to give? I know that's a tough one to see in the second role, but my faith, my family, my philanthropy, my friends, Christmas is around the corner. How much am I going to give to others as a percentage in that $1,000? And then, of course, we have to pay that society choice. These are our taxes. How much are you earmarking for your taxes? And then you get to see the fundamental trickle down of what you then get to live on. Doesn't matter how big. I get to work with professional athletes, they get $1 million paycheck. It's going to break down to the same choices. So, as you see the simplicity of that system, you get introduced to this concept of opportunity and opportunity cost. Everything around money, as we saw with that money is question, everything is personal. It's your choices. It is your opportunity, but then it is also the cost that you want to accept. What are you willing to give up? If I give to my future, well, I can't spend those dollars today, and vice versa. If I spend them today, cannot give them to my future. So where are you in your journey? And now let's look at the money bucket system that we are here to discuss and we'll go through. Every dollar you make is going to fall through this system. Doesn't matter how you choose, you get to choose, but every dollar is going to go and do a job. What job is going to be your choice? I like to call this your society choice. Why? Because taxes represent everything in between what I own and what you own. But that is our tax dollars. Your past choices are anything due before the month begins. We see November is halfway through, December is on the horizon. Before December even begins, you've spent money in December. How much have you already spent? Then we do get to look into these present day choices. What is the food, the fun, the fashion, the furniture we are going to choose to spend on today? Then we step into the future. I like to say, if you ever want to have FU money, begin with future you. And last but not least, you look at the compassion choice, which is that who and how do I want to give? As you look at these five, I'd love to see in the chat, which of these five do you think is going to be the one that leads to your overall happiness? The one that gives you a sense of purpose and fulfillment in your life, in your career, for your paychecks? Which one of these five choices do you think is going to lead to your most fulfillment? I love that. My future choice. Future choice is a massive, massive piece that we want to get started. But then you start to see a few that are dropping compassion in there. How do I measure both? Well, I have to plan for tomorrow, but I also want to give and impact others today. This is where science is going to start to take a place and look at it and say, saving and investing is a vast priority we need. But when we look at purpose in our paycheck, when we look at an overall sense of an overall sense of satisfaction, it is going to be found in that compassion choice. Who, what, or where do you want to impact outside of yourself? Now, I'm not going to ask you to give all your money away, don't worry, but we will get to a place as we identify why that compassion choice is so important. So as we said, we got to start reorganizing from the get-go. Let's start with that future choice, saving and investing. This is where we step into that investor mindset and really the purpose and the goal of you becoming more financially educated, speaking this language, is to start becoming an investor. The question is, if you were to compare what it means to save and what it means to invest, what is the difference between these two? Often we categorize them as the same. They're both dollars meant for the future, for a tomorrow in ahead of us. But we do need to see the fundamental differences here. When I look at saving, it is protecting me from risk. You're saving up for an event. As I mentioned, maybe in a few months you want to go on vacation. Maybe in a year you want to buy a car or a home. Perhaps it's an engagement ring. If it is, congratulations. But when we look at investing, I start to look at what I want to invest into. It is something that I have to, as I learn about money, accept that investing has risk. Without risk, there is no return. So if you look at the purpose for your dollars, these dollars I want to have for my home that I'm going to buy in a year. Well, I don't want to put those dollars at risk because in a year, I don't want them to be less. So I need to protect them from that risk. Those are saving. As I look at investing, these are dollars that I have to accept. May go up, may go down, but they're not for today or tomorrow. They're for further down the road into my future. So the next logical question is, where and how do I start to save and protect my dollars? This is where we want to begin a differentiation between what is a bank and what is a credit union. Both are great financial institutions. Again, as everything in money, it comes down to your choice. When we look at banks, those are for-profit companies. A credit union, not just the place where giving out credit cards, I hear that a lot. A credit union is a financial institution that is a not-for-profit company. When you look at the ownership, that nonprofit credit union is owned by you, the members. On the flip side, that bank, for-profit entity, corporation, is owned by shareholders. Well, what does that mean as you look at comparing where and how? From a security perspective, they are both insured. $250,000 per account per person. You will have the same insurance. So that is a even mark in comparison. But when you start to look at the advantages, a for-profit company, a bank, is going to have a lot more money. With that money, they're going to be able to market to you. They're going to be able to build apps. They're going to possibly have more locations nationwide and globally. When I look at the credit union, the advantages it can have is because I own it and they're not giving any profit up to a shareholder. Perhaps it can offer me a better interest rate on a car loan. Perhaps it can give me more money in a savings account. That margin that sometimes goes to the shareholders is being held for you, the owner and the member of a credit union. As I mentioned, when you look at it locationally, banks typically are going to have a bigger footprint than a credit union, which is going to be geographically and community focused. So if, for example, you are in Cleveland, Ohio, and thinking about taking a job in Dallas, Texas, well, perhaps you're going to need a bank or an institution that you want a footprint in both. If you want to go digital or virtual, then that's not so much of an advantage or disadvantage for you. So then I find out I want a bank or I want a credit union, your choice. But what are the types of savings accounts that I can go and start to protect those dollars in? The first one is going to be a high yield savings account. If you're just trying to get started and you're saying, Jed, I want to save my first $500 or $5,000, high yield savings accounts are an excellent. High yield means they're going to pay you a higher interest rate than a traditional savings account. What they do allow is the access and the liquidity. They allow you to pull your money back out of this account when you need it. It's going to have lower minimums and lower account balances needed as you look at opening them. Then you say, well, Jed, no, my time horizon is 1 year. This time next year, I want to look at buying a car or a home or even going to having my kids go to college. If you know your time horizon, a certificate of deposit will become a great tool. Here is the catch. It is locked or no liquidity for your dollars. If you open a 6-month CD or a 12-month, 1-year CD, those dollars have to stay in there for that time period because the bank is going to use them for different purposes. So as you look at which type of account I want to open, ask yourself if I know the time horizon. The other catch to a CD and high yield savings is the interest rate. In a CD, your money is locked into that account, but so is your interest rate. If you think in the future interest rates are going to start sinking, locking in your interest rate today in a CD might be an advantage. If you look at a high yield savings and say, well, I think interest rates are going to go up or go down, your interest rate in a high yield savings will fluctuate with the federal funds rate and whatever fundamental tool that institution is using. The third choice is going to be a money market account. And why this comes in at number 3 is it typically has a higher minimum requirement and a higher a higher fee associated to it. So we like to look at it as an interesting tool, but not for everyone. What it is going to do is combine a checking and a savings account. It's going to allow you to write checks and spend, but it is also going to give you that interest rate. Why it charges higher fees is because it's doing more for you. So as you look at where do I want to start that savings account and build my cushion aka your emergency fund, you have three options depending on: do you need access, how much do you have, and where do you want to lock in that interest rate? Do you have a time horizon? This is as you go in wanting to empower you to feel comfortable and confident to start to have this conversation. What are my fees? What are the minimums? What do I get in interest? When I look at a savings account, I should have less fees because they're going to use my dollars. In a checking account, you're going to have more fees associated. So this is a question love to ask: where do our tax dollars go? As we look at it, they go to public transportation, the fire department, military, public schools, public hospitals, really anything and everything in our society. But as we start to look at where those dollars go, we understand they're going to take them from a lot of different places. So as you look at the different types of taxes, we're going to be introduced immediately to that income tax. Your day-to-day tax is the one at the bottom, that sales tax. When you become an investor, you will have capital gains tax. In a little bit, we are going to identify how to possibly avoid that capital gains in a different tax advantage account. And then if you own a car or a home, you've been introduced to property taxes. As we go from gross to net income, we start to see that income tax taken out. I love to say it's looking at a turkey and saying, hey, you go and buy a 20-pound turkey. Thanksgiving is right around the corner. But how much of that 20 pounds actually ends up on your plate, willing and ready to eat? Well, not 20 pounds. You got to remove the giblets, the goblets. Some people remove the skin, other things, your choice. But as you look at that 20-pound turkey, that is your gross income, the top bar number. As you look at your net income, that is how much makes it onto your plate. And with that, you have to remove some federal, some state, depending on which state you're in, and even some city, depending on which city you are in. Those four letters at the bottom, FICA, are our Social Security and Medicare payments. These are our payroll taxes. You pay into them while you're working and benefit from them down the road. Nobody in today's world is looking at getting a pension, and many are looking at Social Security and saying, I don't know if this is exactly what I was hoping it would be. It wasn't meant to be the singular and sole part of your retirement plan, and today it's proving not to be able to maintain a current lifestyle. The other caveat to FICA is if you are a 1099 contractor, entrepreneur, and business owner, you get to pay the employee side of that, 7.65%, and the employer side of that, another 7.65%. Now, you do get a tax deduction for self-employment taxes, but I always love to call out for young hustlers and entrepreneurs, that FICA tax is going to be seen right away. How income taxes work, I like to see it as a restaurant. You have employees at $10. Perhaps this is the hostess that sits everyone. Then you have employees at $20. These are the waiters, the servers. Then the heat in the kitchen, you got to have your cooks. Maybe those are $30 employees. And then you have your singular manager who oversees, and you have to pay that person $50. Each group of employees is paid a different based on where and what they do. They are bracketed into groups. When you look at the progressive federal income tax code, that's exactly how we start to look at your paychecks. The first paycheck is going to be in the lowest percentage for taxes. As you progress and get more, you will progressively pay more in federal income as your paychecks go up. If you are fortunate enough to make a certain amount of dollars, you will fall into the 24% category, which again is not ideal, but it's also a good problem to have. As you start to look at strategies around how to reduce your taxes, as true Americans, we know we have to pay our taxes. It supports our society. But nobody wants to pay more taxes than they owe. The first perfect tax deduction is going to be called the standard deduction. Everyone on this call has access to the standard deduction. First $15,000 you make this year is 0% federal taxes. That looks at it and says whatever paycheck came in at the end of the year, came in December, that is where you're going to start removing your deductions. So as you can see here, I took the standard deduction. It took my 10th employee or 10th paycheck and said, do not pay taxes on this one. If you get to a point where you have a primary residence and you're paying interest on a mortgage, you have hospital bills, you're giving charity and philanthropically over $15,000, that is when you can look into itemizing your taxes. No longer just taking the standard, but now adding up how and where you're spending money over that $15,000 mark. Two tax terms I want to introduce you to is the effective or the average. How much are you paying over all 10 employees? And the marginal or the next. If you got one more paycheck, what bracket would they fit into? In this case, I got one more paycheck at 11. It would fall into that 24%. That would be my marginal bracket. If you looked at it and said overall 10 or 11, what am I on average paying? It'd be about 17 or 18%. That would be my effective or average. Then we're going to take a step back and look at, as I mentioned, the difference between a W-2 and a 1099. A W-2 is a traditional worker. They work at a company. Their taxes are going to be withheld and supported by that company, and they're going to get benefits and different items from that company. As a 1099 contractor, this is a massively different environment. You work for yourself and you contract with other companies. That means you are the responsible party when it comes to taxes, when it comes to benefits, when it comes to your future and retirement. All of that falls on you, the business owner. As you look at when you file, a 1099 is going to file 4 times a year as a business, whereas a W-2 only has to file once a year. People hit me and say, well, in my paycheck, they are already taking taxes out. That is withholdings of an estimate. That is not your tax calculation until the end of the year when you tell me what exactly you did and did not do. A quick difference between a W-2, an individual says I made money, my company withheld and took out taxes, and then I got a check of what I got to go spend. A business, a 1099 contractor, is going to make money, spend on their business, and then get taxed. People ask all the time, how does a company like Amazon not pay high taxes? They spend before they show a profit or what gets taxed at the end of the day. So those tax processes are very different. We talked about this at the beginning. I love to circle back and just see it as what is providing purpose for your paycheck. Eating today, important. Saving for tomorrow, important. But having a choice where you look at what those dollars are going to support and impact is going to change how you see your money. This is where you take a moment and ask yourself, is there a person I want to support? Is there a place that has supported me? Or is there a cause I want to connect and believe in? I don't want you to think about spending all of your money, but give me a penny for your thoughts. Start the habit with 1%. This is a little ironic because this week they have printed the last pennies that are going to go into circulation here in the United States. The Federal Mint printed them, showed them off. And it took 4 cents to make every penny, which I think is why we're not going to make them anymore. But having a person, place, or cause is going to give you a sense of purpose when you look on those long days and say, I am supporting. If you're looking for an account to support with, a donor advised fund is an amazing tool. It gives you a foundation in a box without all the complexities and legalities. It gives you the tax deduction today. You're able to invest the dollars and increase your impact, but you do not have the same requirements as a foundation. Donor advised funds are a very cool tool for those of you who want to focus on your compassion choice. Now, here's where we're going to start to identify the main purpose of this session and what I want you to leave here with, the action items. Our past choices, as I heard or said earlier, anything due before the month begins. What are some examples of those? Well, as I look at my housing, whether that's my rent, my dorm, my mortgage, you choose your housing, your bills. What bills are already due? Doesn't matter what I do next month, these bills are due. Your subscriptions. Marketing has shifted and changed. You don't want to buy anything, you'll rent it for $7.99 or $29.99 a month. And then last but not least, of course, your debt payments. I want to highlight in your debt payments, buy now, pay later is the new credit card. It is what it says. Buy now, pay as you go, pay later on. And it allows you to do what credit allows you to do, overspend. So be cautious of those. Use them wisely as they are good instruments and tools. If you can add these four up into a singular ballpark number, between my housing, that's 2,000, my bills, that's 1,000, subscriptions, that's 500, and my debt, that's another 500, there's $4,000 in my past choices each and every month. Go ahead and try to think of what your past choice number is. We're going to circle back to that here in a second. Credit is one of the most misunderstood tools in our financial system. We got to identify when we swipe a debit card, it is connected straight to our bank. When we swipe a credit card, that is not our money. That is a third-party institution. What do they send? Well, your bank is going to send cash from your account. That third party is going to send credit, which is nothing more than a trust promise that you're going to come back and pay again later. Why can they charge you? Quite simply, when you swipe your bank account, they don't charge you. It's your money. When you swipe a credit card, they charge you because you have begun a loan and interest because it is not your money. As we look at that interest adding up, the credit trap, which we have all been warned and scared straight of, is when anything you purchase ends up costing you more than the original price. That is what the credit trap is, and that is what we want to avoid. Some examples of that. Well, I wanted a $3,000 computer. I can go pay for it all in cash, and when I'm done, that computer cost me $3,000. Well, in plan B, I put it all on credit, but then later that month, I went back and paid from my bank account, so it is paid off, again, $3,000. Scenario C says I want to pay half on credit, half in cash, and then I am going to make some healthy 10% payments each month. That is still going to take me about 3.5 years to pay off, and over almost $500 of interest. That is falling into the credit trap. Many people get that letter or message in from their credit company and say, the minimum amount due, you owe me $3,000, but let's call it good at just $60 this month. How does that feel? And everybody says, man, I got the coolest credit company in the world. What they're not realizing is that the minimum amount due should make them extremely mad. MAD makes me mad. It's going to take them 27 years and triple the cost of that computer with $6,000 of interest. This is why you're getting that message. I love this example. I love the call out, and to just prove a point of why the minimum amount due is one of the greatest tricks that is in the financial system, we're going to change the balance to $4,000. You have an 18% interest rate on that $4,000 credit card, which means your daily, every day of the year, interest rate is 0.004. And you look at it and say, 0.004, that's nothing. I'm cool with using that and making sure I only pay that minimum payment. So that minimum payment on $4,000 is $80. Your total ending balance is now $3,920. You paid $80. That's natural that you would think $3,920 is what's left. Here's where it gets really annoying and makes me mad. Now that 0.004 over the 30-day cycle is going to end up being about $2 a day or $57.99 for the month. That is the interest you are paying on that $3,920 balance. Why this makes no sense is you paid $80, but your new balance next month is $3,978 when you felt like you paid 80, you really only paid $22 off. The credit trap, the trick that eats people's finances. A lot of people say, I cannot afford to pay off my credit card. Looking at this, you can't afford not to. I understand it is a situation and a scenario many people struggle with, but this is the alert. How do you avoid it at first? But then how do you get out of this hole and get out of the credit trap as soon as possible? I've given the warning I give you and a concerning. Now I'm going to flip the coin and tell you why you need to use credit cards. Kind of a different mindset, different approach. But as you look at it, a credit card is going to give you rewards. Watch any credit card commercial in history, you're going to get rewards for your credit card. It's actually going to be accepted by a wider audience globally and across the country. But here's the ones I really want you to understand. Credit cards are going to give you extra insurance on some of your purchases, warranties. Then there's the limited liability. In today's cybersecurity world, access to your debit card and your bank account means I steal directly from you. If I'm stealing from your credit card, I don't steal from you. I steal from that third-party company, the credit company. Possibly the most important reason you need to use a credit card today is for your cyber defense. That is counterintuitive to Mr. Ramsey, and you could tell him to bring it on. But as we look at this tool, it is becoming a massive cyber defense technique. And last but not least, that credit score, your financial reputation. How are you going to use and see dollars in the future? That is going to be started to be built by that credit score. So as you open up a credit card, look at that APR, annual percentage rate, but you should also understand you're not going to carry a balance. You're going to pay it off in full each and every month, and that is going to mean you pay zero in interest. I pay off my balance in full, I pay zero in interest. What is your credit limit? When is the due date? Very important to know. What fees and rewards? As I mentioned earlier, add those 4 choices for your past choices up and look at how you have spent money before the month even begins. That's an important number. We're going to add that one here in a second with our present choices. This is something I don't want you to be shocked, overwhelmed, or anxious about, but to just start thinking through, how can I be conscious about how much I spend a month on food? What about on fashion, clothing, personal care? What about on furniture? And this one's a little all-encompassing around, hey, my apartment or house stuff, my car, my electronics. And then the last and maybe most important one is that fun category. How much of these am I spending on a month-to-month basis? Again, this is not a budgeting workshop or class. This is a cash management system. And I want you to quickly add those 4 choices up again. So how much do I spend food, fashion, fun, and furniture? Because now we are going to add those 2 together. I have my past choices, what I've already made before the month begins, and I have my present choices, what I make on a day-to-day basis. Those combined are your burn rate, and your monthly burn rate is the most important number in any financial plan. It is the one thing I want you to leave here with. We have a system as well, and I'll show you that here in a moment. But if you leave here understanding what your burn rate is, it is going to impact how much you put into your future, which you can save and invest, how much your cash cushion or your savings account should hold. It should be about 3 to 6 months of your burn rate. It's going to tell you your investment strategy. Why? How much risk can you take on based on your portfolio and that burn rate? How much and what you are going to need to get to freedom, what that freedom number looks like, and then, of course, what your current day-to-day is. As you look at those 5 choices, you see the bucket system take place. Here is a $50,000 salary, the 5 choices. I prioritized my future and put 30%. Society, 20%, and my compassion, a penny for your thoughts. The rest falls to my burn rate, which is going to be about $2,000 a month. That is what I can live on month to month as my lifestyle. Changing that from 100,000, or 50,000 to 100,000. You see the same 30% as my future, but I had to increase my society choice because I made more, progressive income tax code. And then my compassion, I'm making more, I want to start giving a little more. I look at what falls to the bottom of my burn rate, $3,333 a month. A simple system gives me clarity on what my monthly spend can and should be. How you see your income, how you see your world is up to you. I got to work with a guy named Drew Brees for about 4 seasons, and what I loved about working with Drew was how everything he did was a system. He built habits. He actually started to explain to me and break down what a habit was for. Every day in practice, he would rifle through his progressions. Even after he threw the ball, his hands, his eyes, and his feet would go to his second, his third, and fourth reads. Finally, I asked him, I said, I've never seen somebody do that in 20 years of football. Why are you doing the progressions even after you throw the ball? And he explained he wanted to build his habits. He wanted the cue of the snap. He wanted the routine. He wanted his hands and his feet to react without thinking for the reward. And his reward was, I want to process and see what's happening on the field without thinking about where my third read was. This is the essence of positive financial planning. How can you automate and systematize your finances? That credit card we just opened, can you automate your payment each and every month? Yes, you can. Pay it off in full, pay 0% in interest. Well, what about your burn rate? Can you automate that? Yes, you can. And we're going to talk about that here in a second. But if you want to start a new habit, my challenge to you is to focus on the reward. Why are you starting this habit? If you want to stop a bad habit, focus on the cue. Where are you going or what are you doing that starts the bad habit? I love this from Atomic Habits and the Power of Positive Habits. This is a mindset that you see what are your positives and what are your negative habits that you should start to use and work on more. Slow down here because this is the most important slide of the presentation. We're going to talk about investing here in a moment. But if you can see Jed, money guy, dude on the screen, how do I start to look at my system and build my burn rate into a habit? You have already begun doing the hardest part. That's calculating your lifestyle, your burn rate. Let's say that $4,000 a month is your burn. My challenge to you is to not get your paycheck deposited into your bank account anymore. Deposit that into your brokerage account. Can you get your paycheck deposited into a brokerage investment account? You're one step closer to becoming an investor. Once those paychecks and dollars are in your brokerage, you have that portfolio, your brokerage account. Tell your bank what you're going to live on. The first of every month, that 4,000 or your burn rate number is sent from your brokerage account directly to your bank account, and immediately you have built your system, automated it, and made it a habit. You live on your lifestyle, the one you chose, and not on your income. You got another $2,000 raise? Awesome. It doesn't immediately go out the door because it landed into your checking account. Now it goes into your burn rate, or excuse me, goes into your brokerage, and you keep living on that burn. Why is this going to help? Mostly because it's psychological. As I just mentioned, you got a raise, everybody goes hip hip hooray, let's go spend more dollars. I call my lifestyle, I control my burn, I get to tell those dollars what to go do. Your inflation is going to increase life. You need to control it. This is a simple template and formula of how you control your cash flow. Like this, just because it took me a long time to build, fun little automation, but it shows you month to month the paycheck comes in to the brokerage, and then the brokerage sends your burn rate to your checking account. You decide how much you want to spend, then it allows you to live on your lifestyle. So you heard me mention brokerage account. I think we can address The brokerage account is typically meant to start you becoming an investor. It's going to connect or broker you to stocks and bonds and opportunities to invest. Right now, we've just talked about it becoming a cash management tool, utilizing it as a portfolio paycheck. It's unlimited. You can put as much as you want into a brokerage account and it will be liquid. You should be able to sell and have access to these dollars. Where do you want to open this account is up to you. Again, no affiliations. I'm not selling anything. Fidelity, Vanguard, Charles Schwab's has trillions of dollars. So those are pretty big companies. You can also look at the fintech digital first, Robinhood, Stash, Personal Capital. If you're looking for a place to get started, Acorns has been one that has helped millions start investing because you can start with little acorns that turn into big, big trees. All you're going to need to open this account, your personal information, some employment, and of course that bank account that it is going to connect and talk to. As you look at the questions, well, my uninvested cash, which you should not have too much of in a brokerage account, do you want that to sweep into a savings account, possibly to earn some interest? Do you want to play with margin? Margin is a loan, margin is debt, margin is more risk. For now, as a starting investor, leave that alone. Risk tolerance is what risk you are willing to take on. We're going to talk about that here in a moment. If anyone else other than you has authority to trade, you better trust them, and they should act as your fiduciary. Fiduciary. Tax, you will run into capital gains in a brokerage account, and fees. You shouldn't run into too many fees, but as you do look at accounts, different platforms and offerings, that should be a question you should ask. So the last 5 minutes we're going to talk about is how to get invested and where to start your investments. As you look at what you can start to invest in, the two typical places are stocks and bonds. Stocks can also be called equities. Bonds can also be called debts. As you look at a stock, it makes you a part owner of a company. You take a stock equity ownership, you are in that business. As a bond, it makes you a lender. You are giving them money to build their business, but you want that money back plus interest. How do you get paid? Well, as I just mentioned, the bond pays you interest. The stock pays you as the company grows. I bought it at $100. It is now a $200. If I sell it, that's when I make those dollars. Stocks have higher risk, meaning they have higher reward expectation. Bonds have lower risk and lower reward expectations. So where is your risk tolerance? If you're younger, you should take on more risk with stocks. Everybody should be invested in stocks because all of us are going to live much longer, healthier lives. I love this as one of our wrap-up examples. You can drop it in the chat if you're still with me and interested. Who do you think's going to win the Super Bowl this year? We got a couple teams out in charge. We got some from the past that are going to be good. There it is. Myra says the Bills are going to take it home. I love that. All right, West Coast represented, 49ers. According to my son, Kachita says, the Eagles. Huh? It's not easy to repeat, so good luck for the Eagles. The Packers. Jennifer, I love true fans, the Giants fans. You guys are going through a tough time. You'll be back. I like the Patriots myself. Packers, Seahawks, Chiefs. The kingdom arrived. All right. The Chargers. All right. Clayton, get some faith. So let's look at this for a second. I'm out here in Seattle, so I'm going to go with the hometown team, the Seattle Seahawks. You get to, and who was that? Amico and I get to choose the Seattle Seahawks. They are one team. But then you look at it and you say, well, I didn't want just one team. Tara wants the Packers. Well, the Packers are in a 4-team division. And if you could choose one team or 4 teams, well, it makes sense to choose more teams. So Tara's going to get all 4 teams in the NFC North, the division the Packers are in, compared to our one little Seahawks way out here in the West. And then you say, okay, Stephanie likes the Chiefs. Well, the Chiefs are not in the NFC, they're in the AFC. and there are 16 teams in their conference, the AFC. We get the 1 Seahawks. Tara gets the 4 in her Packers division. But Stephanie gets all 16 teams in the AFC compared to 4 compared to 1. Then finally somebody comes to you and says, well, I don't want 16, I don't want 4, I don't want 1. Could I just bet that somebody in the NFL is going to win the Super Bowl? That is where we want to start. That is called an index fund, and it gives you the average return of all 32 teams in the NFL. I know you're waiting, so let's transition to how it relates to investing. And I'm going to go ahead and agree with Rebecca and Sue. It'd be nice to see the Honolulu Blue and Lions in the Super Bowl. I got one of their helmets up here as well. As we walked through that scenario, you can buy one team, one company at a time. You want company X. That is going to give you the most risk, which means the most reward potential. But you look at it and you go, Jed, I don't know how to choose that. So now we get introduced to a mutual fund, 4 companies, or an ETF, maybe it's 16 companies, just like the division and conference. This is going to be W, X, Y, and Z, but you are now paying somebody to choose which companies are going to go into that fund. It's going to be a little bit higher of a fee. It is going to give you some diversification. And as you look at it, a lot of people like this tool. But this is not a great one to get started. With that, you just want to bet that somebody in the NFL is going to win the Super Bowl. And that's where this index fund concept and idea comes from. Can I bet on all 32 teams in the NFL? Or if I look at the alphabet A through Z, the most diversified, the lowest fees, and over a long-term time horizon, these have paid dramatically more than active investors. Warren Buffett actually took out a bet in 2010 and said, who can beat an index over the next decade? Spoiler alert, nobody did. So I look at it and I say, I want to invest in stocks, index, be average, the average return. How do I choose? Well, there's an index called the Dow Jones Industrial Average that has 30 massive companies and historic companies here in the United States. Oh, I think technology is the future. Well, QQQ is 100 technology companies that you can invest in with a single choice. BOO is the S&P 500. It is the 500 largest companies here in the United States. RUA is a larger index, 3,000 companies here in the United States. And VT is a global index that supports and pays or buys an ownership in 10,000 companies worldwide. Your index, your choice, where and how do you want to diversify, but begin your investment journey. As you look at that, yes, I want to invest here in the United States. You have some great options. You want to go international, other good indexes out there. Just wanted to give you some examples. The last question you're probably asking is, well, where should I go about buying these? You talked about a brokerage account, but you also mentioned that capital gains problem. Okay, let's look at our last analogy for the day. You have 3 different trees, and you go to Home Depot, and the first tree, the person comes up to you and says, beautiful tree. When you get home, trim the tree how you want it to look, stick it into the ground, then let the tree grow, and you will have to trim it again down the road. So I trim the tree before I put it into the dirt and after it grows. Pretty simple. The second tree, the person comes up to you and says, well, this one's a little bit tricky. You're going to take this one home. Don't touch the tree at all. Stick it straight into the dirt. Then let it grow as big as you can. And when you want to use it and look at it down the road, you trim it later on down the road. The third tree, the person scratches their head and says, I got something for you. This is a new secret. It's a new tool. It's called Roth soil. When you get home, you got to trim that tree, stick it into that Roth soil, and then you never trim that tree again. So you just trim it before it gets into the dirt. Those 3 trees are your 3 types of investment accounts. The brokerage account, which we talked about opening, is the most accessible. It gives you liquidity because you can pull dollars out of this account. But you are taxed twice, income tax to put it in, and then capital gains as it grows. A 401k or IRA is that deferred account. You get a tax break today, but later down the road, when you want to use that tree, you're going to have to tax those dollars. A Roth soil is unique. You get taxed today, but you never pay taxes again. I put $1,000 into a Roth IRA, it grows to $1 million, zero taxes owed. That is a massive tool and advantage. It depends on what income bracket you're in, where you are in your career, and what other investments you have, of which accounts you should use. But as you look at tax advantage, do you want a tax break today, 401k, IRA? Do you want a tax break for the rest of your life? That's going to be a Roth account. As you look at setting up that system, that brokerage account becomes your quarterback. You send your burn rate, you send your cushion, you send your automatic payment for your credit, and then you fulfill your tax advantaged accounts. You have just taken control of your money vehicle. Control that burn, live your life. I love wrapping up on this just to give you some short-term goals and how you can identify if you are in credit card debt, that is your priority. If you have not built that cash cushion, there it is. Then you start looking at becoming an investor. That free money is if you're a W-2 employee working at a company. The difference between rich and wealth is what you have saved for your future over what your burn rate is. That will tell you how many years of wealth you've actually created. I live on about $100,000 a year. I have $200,000 saved. That means I have 2 years of wealth built for me. You can calculate how wealthy you are, and remember, your goal is to have decades. I love what I do. This is a dream come true. I get to work with professional athletes. Was with the Denver Broncos on Monday. Yesterday, I worked with college students, student athletes. I call them business athletes. And tomorrow, I get to talk to some of the high schools using our semester-long curriculum. You tell me where you fit. I would love for you to follow, connect on LinkedIn. Give me some support, some love for spreading this message of financial literacy and empowering people like you to speak the language of money. If you're interested, connect with me on LinkedIn. Tell me how we did. Tell me if you're interested. And if you are looking for a curriculum for your students on campus, by all means, we can help you. With that, I want you to measure your opportunities and the cost, set up those money buckets, and my goal, call to action, is for you to start setting up a portfolio paycheck.